Tonight, there are three true stories about a visit to the dentist, a mysterious pill bottle, and an exam room story with the talking fish. In October 1996, a man named Richard needed to see a dentist. He had no money and was living on the streets of Newark, New Jersey. Someone mentioned a free clinic on the outskirts of town, in a part of town with mostly empty buildings. Richard decided to go there, hoping to finally get help. Richard walked the quiet, empty streets until he found a place. It looked old, deserted, and abandoned. There was no sign outside, just a faded blue door with chipped paint. He walked inside and found himself in a dark, cold waiting room. The air was dusty and the walls were covered with rows of chairs. He sat down and noticed that no one else was there. He waited, hoping that someone would call him back. The only light in the room came from a fish tank in the center. It was bright and looked out of place. The tank was large, and there was only one large fish inside. Richard didn't know what kind of fish it was, but it was slowly swimming in circles, watching him the whole time. Richard felt eyes following him wherever he looked. As he waited, he kept looking at the tank. The fish's eyes looked very sharp and focused, unlike the eyes of a normal fish. When he looked closer, he noticed something that made him feel strange. The creature had white, straight teeth like a human's. He felt uneasy, but sat there hoping the dentist would come out soon. After a few minutes, he looked at the tank again. This time, the creature stopped swimming and floated up and stared at him. Richard looked away, but when he looked back, something seemed different. The fish's mouth seemed to form a smile. In this strange smile, he could see the human teeth, and he couldn't raise his eyes. He wondered if he was seeing things, but when he looked at me, he felt a chill run through his body. The fish's lips seemed to move as if it was trying to say something. There was no sound, but Richard could see the words it was saying, "You're not here." He looked around the room, hoping someone else would come in, but the room remained empty. He waited a few more minutes, hoping someone would come to his aid, but no one did. The fish swam by, watching and smiling with human-like teeth. Finally, Richard couldn't take it anymore. He got up and quickly left the building, not looking back at the tank as he walked out the door. 4 weeks afterward, Richard couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen. The fish's strange smile, the intense eyes, and those words kept coming back to him. He remembered how clear they had been. "You're not here." Richard tried to tell several people about the strange clinic, but they all said it was probably a strange dream. But Richard was sure it was real. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He asked if anyone knew of a free clinic in the area, but no one seemed to know anything about it. Richard even went to libraries and looked through old newspapers to see if there was any mention of a dentist or clinic in the area. Each time he found nothing. It was as if there was no place. About a month later, he decided to go back to see if he could find the clinic. He thought that if he just found it, he might understand what had happened. He retraced his steps, walked through the same empty streets, and found the building he remembered as the clinic. But this time, it was just an old, clapboard building. The windows were broken, and graffiti covered the walls. There was no blue door and no sign for the clinic. Confused, Richard walked into a nearby store and asked the owner if he knew of any dentist offices. According to the owner, the building had been empty for years. Richard told him that there had been a dentist or clinic. A charming and inquisitive narrator with an American accent leads a magical adventure suitable for adults in the world of horror stories. A 37-year-old American man tells scary stories. Office there for a long time, perhaps decades. Richard explained what he had seen, but the store owner shook his head. Richard, more puzzled than ever, decided to check the public records to see if there was any mention of a clinic at that address. He scoured through old directories and records, hoping to find any sign of a dentist who might have worked there, but he found nothing. For many years, there had been no record of any clinic or dentist. Eventually, Richard decided to leave Newark and try to start over somewhere else. He found a new home, a permanent job, and managed to turn his life around. But he never forgot that day in the strange waiting room. He remembered every detail, the way the fish looked at him, his teeth, his words, "You're not here." Commentary by Stephen Kammer. Ian the Segway. T.W. Story: The Faith Pill. The Faith Bottle. In 1986, something strange happened at Coral Ridge Hospital in Montgomery, Alabama. A pharmacist named Michael was working late one night, stocking the pantry with medications. When he reached the back shelf, he noticed an old, dusty bottle of pills. It had no label or instructions. Instead, only one word was scratched into the cup: faith. Michael opened the bottle and saw that it was filled with small white pills. They looked ordinary, and he didn't remember seeing them before. He checked the hospital records, but there was nothing on the bottle. Michael was puzzled, but he put the bottle aside, thinking he would look at it later. Michael was quick to respond and familiar with all the medications available at the hospital. However, this bottle was a secret. The pharmacy kept strict records, but there were no details about these pills. He wondered if they had been lost for years or if they had been long gone. However, something felt off about it and decided to ask his supervisor, but he never got around to it. Meanwhile, Michael's younger sister, Lily, was very sick. He was only 12 years old and had been suffering from a rare disease for months. His condition caused severe pain and weakness, keeping him in the hospital almost constantly. Doctors tried various treatments, but none worked. Lily lost a lot of weight and energy and could barely sit up in bed most days. Michael was heartbroken. He felt helpless watching her suffer, and although he wasn't very religious, he went to the hospital chapel one night and prayed. He was asking for some kind of miracle to help him. When he got back to her room, he thought about the strange bottle he had found earlier. Out of desperation and hope, she decided to give him one of the pills. The next morning, Lily was noticeably better. His fever was gone, and he had more energy than he had in months. The nurses immediately noticed his improvement and ran tests. The results showed that his condition had finally stabilized. Within a few days, Lily's blood work was back to normal for the first time. His doctors were shocked. He continued to improve and was soon able to sit up and even walk around the room. After a while, Lily was able to leave the hospital. Michael and his family were happy. The doctors were confused but grateful. Michael decided not to tell anyone about the pills because he was worried that they might think he had done something unusual. Over the next few weeks, Michael wanted to know more about the mysterious bottle. He sent one of the pills to the hospital lab for testing. However, the results were confusing. The pill appeared to contain only basic fillers, with no active ingredients that were supposed to help Lily's condition. The lab report said the pill was mostly empty, but it did make Lily feel better somehow. Michael began to wonder if the pills only worked because Lily believed in them. He was intrigued and thought he could test this theory. He decided to give the pills to some patients who were sick. A charming and inquisitive narrator with an American accent leads a magical adventure suitable for adults in the world of horror stories. Was very sick and had little hope. He quietly gave the pills to several patients and watched them closely. Each time, he explained to them that the medicine would only work if they truly believed it would help them. The first patient was a man with a serious heart problem. He was in his 60s and had lost hope. Michael gave him a pill and told him it would only work if he believed. Within 2 days, the man's heart condition improved. The doctors were amazed and couldn't explain it. The man was able to leave the hospital within a week. Another patient, a woman with cancer, had only a few weeks to live. He had no other treatment options. Michael gave her a single pill, and explained that she had to believe in it for it to work. The next week, the cancer shrank slightly, and he showed unexpected improvement. His doctors were surprised and checked his records to make sure he hadn't received any other treatment. Every time Michael gave the pill, he noticed that the patient only got better if he really believed it would work. Then, one night in April, the bottle disappeared. Michael looked everywhere but couldn't find it. No one else at the hospital knew where he had gone. Michael was worried, but he kept the news to himself, assuming someone had accidentally dropped it. But no one reported finding him. 5 years later, in 1991, a new nurse named Sarah started the night shift at Coral Ridge Hospital. She was fresh out of nursing school and used to the hospital routine. One night, while stocking up, he found an old glass bottle with the word faith written on the side. He didn't know what it was, but decided to keep it just in case one of Sarah's patients had been very sick for a long time. All treatments had failed, and there was little hope. Sarah decided to try one of the pills in the strange bottle. The patient was told that the medicine would only work if he truly believed it would help him. He took the pills with hope. Over the next few days, the patient began to recover, surprising the doctors and nurses. No one could explain his sudden improvement. When Sarah told her supervisor about the strange bottle, they returned to find it, but it had disappeared again. Since then, no one has seen the bottle at Coral Ridge Hospital. Some believe the story is just a coincidence or a legend. Others believe the bottle had some mystical power. However, everyone who knew the story agreed on one thing. Every patient who took a pill from this bottle truly believed it would help them. Of the patients who reported these strange symptoms were first seen in the third examination room. A young woman named Kelly came to the hospital with a sprained ankle and was treated in the third examination room. After treatment, she went home, but returned within a week with a swollen face, almost an allergic reaction. Tests showed no signs of allergy or infection. The doctors gave him medicine and he went away, but he came back a week later with an itchy rash on his hands. Despite more tests, the doctors couldn't find anything and sent him home without a response. Another patient, George, was being treated in the exam room for a sprained wrist. 2 days later, he came back and said he couldn't keep food down and was constantly nauseous. The doctors checked for stomach problems but found nothing. George returned home, but for the third time, he was now dizzy. Each time the doctors ran tests, and each time the results were normal. Other patients returned with joint pain, unexplained bruising, and even memory problems. A man named Pete returned after forgetting his phone number and address. All of these patients had been seen for the first time in the examination room before these strange symptoms developed. By August, Dr. Jackson decided to look through the records to see if there was a pattern. He found that only the patients seen in the examination room in room 3 had returned with these unexplained symptoms. The patients in the other rooms had no such problems. He began to wonder if there was something wrong with the room itself. So he began researching the hospital's history. St. Bernard's was built in 1932 and had undergone many changes over the years. When Dr. Jackson looked at the old floor plans, he discovered something unexpected. In the 1930s and 1940s, the third examination room had been used as a morgue where bodies were temporarily stored until burial. This fact made Dr. Jackson feel uneasy, but he kept it to himself, not wanting to worry anyone else. Shortly after, his wife Catherine came to the hospital for a routine checkup. Coincidentally, he was assigned to the third exam room. Catherine had always been in good health with no serious problems, but a few days after his visit, she felt a strange feeling. She was unusually tired, had occasional aches and pains, and had begun losing weight for no apparent reason. Dr. Jackson was concerned and ordered more tests. This time, they found a small tumor in her abdomen that hadn't been there before. She underwent surgery to remove it and thankfully recovered. But Dr. Jackson left feeling uneasy. The cases in the third exam room were piling up, and he could no longer ignore the strange pattern. After Catherine's experience, Dr. Jackson reviewed old records of the hospital's history. He learned that exam room 3 was once the busiest morgue in the area, where hundreds of bodies were stored and prepared for burial. Most of these people died from diseases, and some died from accidents. The room's history was disturbing. Dr. Jackson decided to close exam room 3. He moved all of her future appointments to other examination rooms, but she didn't tell the hospital staff the real reason. She only said it was closed for maintenance. However, she personally advised her closest colleagues to avoid the room. Once the third examination room was closed, the mysterious cases almost completely stopped. Patients no longer returned with unexplained symptoms, and the hospital returned to normal. But the story of the third exam room persisted. Over time, it became a quiet rumor among the staff. During the first few weeks at the hospital, new nurses and doctors often heard terrifying stories about the haunted room. The nurse who heard the news refused to go through the third exam room. Some doctors said they felt uncomfortable even walking through the door. Some patients even wondered if the stories were true, although most did not know the full story. Finally, the room was sealed. Nothing inside was touched, and it was never used again. Today, nearly 20 years later, the third exam room remains closed and unused. Street Barnard General Hospital continues to operate, but 3 examination rooms remain mysterious. So far, no one has been able to explain it. And so the story ends. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell button to receive all the stories. Like, share, and rate the story in a comment. Thank you for watching.